welcome to this week's review of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. This week I'm reviewing the episode High Speed, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives and the headline positives. All the things I enjoyed about this particular episode. I thought that this was a good, fun episode with Crawler. I liked the developing mystery with the delivery man, and I think that the episode itself balances its tone between its two composite sections fairly decently. Last week we had All Might fighting food. This week we get something a little bit more normal and a little bit less surreal. This week we see Crawler fighting a bunch of rowdy high school students and once again getting beaten up for his troubles. Seemingly it's not really clear whether or not he actually won his tussle or not, given the fact we don't dwell on it all that much. I'm guessing that once again he got well and truly walloped for his troubles. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen, the guy that gets beaten up by just any rando in the street. So it's not just random guys seemingly walking out the local Weatherspoons and knocking about, it's also just high school delinquents. So whoop-de-doo! Good for him! He's spending most of his time at university now getting beaten up by just random civilians. But hey, it's nice to see a running theme here. Now, to be fair, as I said last week, it does add something of a endearing quality to him getting knocked about as much as he is doing. This is not the chosen one, this is not the guy with all the gifts and all the powers. He is, for all intents and purposes, just a guy in a hoodie and a lot of self-belief in his activities, which time and time again seemingly results in him getting knocked about, and it does underline just how reliant he was on Knuckle Duster to, well, do all the fighting when he was still knocking about. Of course, with this whole sequence of events, it isn't all fun and games and bruises, as once again he manages to bungle his way into finding out more about his quirk. I do like the slight subversive edge that we get with this. In series like this, and even within this series, more referring to the main series itself, when a character discovers a new power, they will use that to save the day. You know, think about the various different times that Midori in the main series has discovered one of the powers hidden within One for All, and then, oh look, he used that to get the win in. Or within other series like Dragon Ball, whenever Goku discovers a new grade of Super Saiyan or some new superpower, that is a thing that is used to save the day, or a version of that that's taken a level beyond is the thing that ends up saving the day. With this series, it doesn't really work like that. Here, him discovering a new power just doesn't really make much of a difference at all, because almost as soon as he discovers that his power works a little bit differently than he thought it did, he immediately gets smacked in the face with a rocket punch and he seemingly gets beaten up off screen. Now, in fairness, with all of this, which is another element that makes it a little bit more subversive than other superhero series, is that he isn't unlocking new powers. More so, he's discovering, or rather rediscovering, what his quirk really is. From what was established a couple volumes ago, he used to get knocked about by his overprotective mother to stop him using his quirk when he was younger. As such, a lot of his powers and how it truly works has become deeper recessed within him. And it's only now with him, well, throwing himself into harm's way that he's really discovering exactly what it is and what it can end up doing. And as he grows in confidence and dedicates himself more and more into vigilante work, it's him discovering exactly the nuances of his power and how it truly works. It's an interesting way of dealing with powering up a character and without getting into the realms of power creep. Yeah, it is a little bit silly that he isn't really, studying these things or really making a concerted effort to learn them. They just seemingly kind of happen because of freak happenstance, but again, this does help us remedy the problem of power creep. I mean, he goes from just kind of sort of floating along the ground only about 6 or 7 centimeters off the ground to being able to stick to walls, and he goes from being just about able to float above the ground to being able to control himself floating above the ground to, he accidentally figures out that he can cling to walls, and well, now he can throw things with this power about as well as your average cricketer or baseball player could do. So, ooh, look out, All for One, this guy can turn slightly when he's floating along the ground and throw things with a level of competency of your average athlete. Woo! I bet he's quaking in his breathing mask right now. Good lord. But still, I like the way that it's being done. There is a part of me that wishes it was done from a mechanical point of view slightly better, because it is a case of right now, oh, he's discovered a new aspect of this power, he's discovered a new way in how it works, but it's always just a part of an episode. It's not a greater focus, it's not a greater interest within the episode itself. We're not really getting into the subconscious level of him discovering or becoming more confident. It just kind of happens, which on the one hand I'm kind of cool with, because it does again avoid the whole thing of going a level beyond. You're not dealing with your average crawler anymore, you're dealing with the legendary super crawler, or the legendarily average super crawler, as it seems to be, given how much he gets beaten up. But we'll see where all of it goes. The fact so much of his powers end up being discovered largely in just side gag moments it's a choice, but we'll see where all this ends up going. I mean, to be fair, I will say is that he isn't discovering all of this by pushing himself or going a level beyond a level beyond. He just kind of falls into all of this stuff left and right, which, you know, like I say, on the one hand it is kind of funny, but on the other hand it does feel as though it does need a little bit more something to it. Because it just kind of happens. Like with this week, at least there's a little bit more of a reason as to why he'd actually accidentally discover this power. He's holding his hands out to protect himself from getting punched in the face, and oh, he can push the energy out of his hands to knock the punches out of the way. Okay, makes sense. Makes a little less sense the other week, well, at least within canon, where he discovered he could stick to walls, and he learnt that by jumping onto the side of a train. Why would he try and do that? That seems incredibly risky and dangerous without knowing that he can do that. But whatever, this week isn't really about thinking about those kind of things. It's once again our hero trying to do the good thing and get beaten up for his troubles. He's lecturing a bunch of rowdy youths from a wall several meters away so that none of them can hit him. But oh, whoopsie daisy, they have rocket punches, and so they can punch him at range, because sure, why not? Now, I will admit there is this feeling that maybe there should have been a little bit more of a spectacular fight here, or really much of a fight to begin with, because it is very much a case of, as we had last week, he finds himself falling into trouble, the trouble happens, and then we see the aftermath of that several minutes or hours after the fact. Like, on the one hand, I am kind of glad that we didn't get into some kind of almost gratuitous action sequence, but on the other hand, yeah, I would have liked a little bit something more here. And even still, you got to look at it on a matter of scale. Like a few volumes ago, we're in a world where he was fighting monsters and twisted mutant creatures, and now he's just fighting guys in the streets, which, you know, conceptually I'm fine with. I like the small-scale heroics of all of this. I just wish there was actually some more heroics and some more, you know, action and fighting for him to do, and it isn't all going to end up getting saved for the end of the volume, but we'll see where all that ends up going. The investigation into the delivery man is underway. I know that isn't his name, but look, I'm not going to call him O'Clock, because that's not his name. That's the name of the superhero whom he has a similar power to. I mean, I will say is that in the grand scheme of things, what we see with this episode, and in connection to the previous one, his actions should be more of a pressing concern than Crawler or Pop Steps, given, you know, he has a superpower that allows him to move about faster than, well, seemingly faster than anything. Like, Crawler and Pop Step just found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time as far as the police are concerned, and this is a guy that assaulted police officers, so, you know, maybe he should be the bigger threat here. Maybe he should be the one that we're investigating into, rather than the two young adults who just kind of bungle their way into problem after problem. Now, the whole speculation as to how his quirk works is fine, and truth be told, given how long it has been since I last read the previous volume, getting a bit of a refresher and a little bit more focused speculation as to how his power works is something that I welcome. Even if to a certain degree it is telling us stuff that we already knew, or stuff that we could always, or rather we could alternatively have pieced together ourselves. The whole mystery of it is presented well enough. I will admit that certain future plot elements have been spoilt for me because, let's face it, I can't have any fun, so, you know, what I will say is that it's one of those cases where at the very least we'll see how that comes into discussion, we'll see how all that works, because as far as I'm aware, it's just a case of, okay, this thing is that thing. It doesn't really, the connecting tissue is missing, so at the very least I can still speculate, and I will say in this episode, the speculation that we get from the characters on the discussion as to who this mysterious man may end up being is I think sufficiently wide enough that for an audience you can speculate with. This guy might be a rogue hero, he might be the offspring of a hero, or someone that has been mentored by a fallen hero, or it could be something wider, weirder and stranger than that. However, the problem is, for me, is almost as soon as we get into the scene with the delivery man, again, not his real name or his character name as far as we're aware, he ends up getting a conversation on the phone where he just outright says that he's a guinea pig. So, this is either something that somewhere along the line's been lost in translation, or they've pretty much outright said that his quirk is in some way artificial. Like he's either been given the quirk of O'Clock or a similar functioning one. They've made a copy of it and they've given it to him, or they've given him enough trigger that now his quirk works like O'Clock's. At this point, it's really hard to say, and like I say, is that even with this knowledge of certain future events, I'm still not in a position where I can actually, spoil it for everyone, because I don't know how it all works and comes together. This is genuine, honest speculation on my half. But from what we can see, this guy seems to have a power similar to O'Clock's. We don't know if it's exactly the same, or whether it is a copy of it, or what, or is just the offspring of him as it has been seen. Because just because he says, oh, he's a guinea pig, doesn't mean to say that he's been given that quirk, that instead his power, what it was, may have been enhanced to become more like it, as I previously mentioned. However, I do have to say is that the fact that he does say that he is a guinea pig in this does underline pretty much only one way that this whole little plot thread is going to unfold itself. Especially bearing in mind that up until this point in this particular series, we've had a ton of different characters being shown to be the end result of a variety of different genetic experiments and strange science concoctions. So yeah, it's kind of ends up feeling that they've almost immediately limited the field of play here. Like only literally a couple pages ago, the world was open as to where this guy could be and what their power could end up being. Then literally a couple pages later, well maybe not literally, but close to it, he pretty much says, oh yeah, I am the result of science. My power comes from science. How it comes from science, we'll all find out together. But for the here and now, it has pretty much knocked on the head the vast majority of possible speculation we have here. What that'll end up being, we'll soon see as we end up going forward, but like I say, it does feel like a bit of a fly in the ointment when you go from, who could this guy be? They could be this, they could be that, they could be this other thing. And then a couple pages later, he is this other thing. Oh, the speculation would have been fun, but I guess we can't have fun then. What I will say, though, again, in the episode's favour, as I've said previously, is that I do think that it balances both the shades and tones that it has within this episode fairly decently well. Towards the start of the episode, we get the silly, lighter, brighter fun with Crawler coming to terms with this new power, or rather the power that he has always had, but he is only now just come back into, an understanding of. I think that it's great fun, and I do think that it's entertaining for what it is. I think that it's executed well. And whilst I am cautious and a little bit on the execution of the matters with the delivery man, I still think that mechanically they both fit well together fairly decently. The pacing of all of this works well, and I have to say is that I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but it definitely feels each episode that we've had thus far in this particular volume does feel a lot longer than what we've had previously. Now, that might well be because there's just more stuff going on, and as such, there's more stuff for us to get involved in and to sink our teeth into. Because, let's face it, the previous volume was pretty much a lot of scenes of Popstep being kidnapped by a giant crab machine going, ah! Constantly, so there's not really much you can do to really drag that out ever so much. So, it's very much a different thing. But still, I think the pacing here does work, and it does help to just make all this material work well, and then you can have the silly, wacky, goofy fun, and then you can pivot into the darker mystery, such that it is very bad. They pretty much just go, oh yeah, he's this. I mean, they don't literally say that what he is, but they are giving a heavy hint that in some way genetics are involved here. Well, of course there are genetics are involved because we're talking about a super world with superpowers are passed on by genetics, but you get the idea. There's some kind of weird science that's been involved with him, and they pretty much say that almost as soon as the speculation has just finally finished setting in your head. But regardless, without me getting into a loop of just making the same statements over and over again, let us get into the negatives. And I have to say is that despite the fact that I have some issues with how the stuff with the delivery man has been done, I have to say is that still that scene in and of itself was strong enough, and you know what, it's still early days, so exactly what they meant by guinea pig I'm sure will end up being explained at a later point. My biggest issue with this episode, however, and this is something that, weirdly enough, I had an issue with the most recent episode of Dragon Ball Daima, is the fact that it is a connecting tissue episode. Now, this is not a criticism per se, because this is an episode which is designed to build up and set up future plot points. It's designed to set up what's coming in the next episode and the episode after that, and so on and so forth. It isn't really the issue that I have isn't the fact that it is a connecting tissue episode. The issue that I have is that there isn't much in the way of payoff for much that is introduced within the episode itself. I mean, to draw the comparison, at least with Dragon Ball, the most recent episode of Dragon Ball Daima, which is, of course, I'm referring to the episode Pansy, there was at least the fight sequence that you got some kind of resolution from. This week, with Dragon Ball, with My Hero Academia Vigilantes, you don't even get that. Because as soon as Crawler discovers, oh crap, I have this other side to this superpower that I didn't know, it's immediately then we cut to something else. There is no thing of him now using this power to defend himself or save the day or anything. He just disappears, and then we cut back to him hours after the flat at his student digs, not once again duffed up and covered in cuts and bruises. Which on the one hand, it makes for a fine gag. The fact that this guy is as inept as he is, and he isn't the super cool, competent, superpowered superhero that other heroes would have. He is just a kind of inept, bungling everyman, and that's endearing and fun. But on the other hand, the sheer fact that we don't have anything significant to really latch on to say, okay, this is the problem that they solved in this episode, I think is something that does take something away from it here. I do understand that this is a different strokes for different folks thing, but I always feel that with episodes like this, regardless of what they are, there still needs to at least be something within the episode itself to latch on to that gets solved. Some B or C plot that just gets done, something that just gets solved, even if it's just something as simple as a character gets in trouble over a £5 note and then, oh, it's solved at the end of the episode. Something like that, at least we give us the sense that, oh, we're turning things around here, we're developing something. But we'll soon see where that goes. But with that said, let's get into the overview and say that this is, you know, for a connecting tissue episode, it is well done for what it is, and what it is enjoyable fun. I think that what they did with the delivery man was, to be blunt, rather clumsy, but at the same time, it's one of those things where what he said is just so open that it could well end up being interpreted and done in different ways. Like I say, the fact he says that he is a guinea pig in this could be anything. Maybe he has O'Clock's quirk because it's been stolen from him. Maybe it is just a copy of it in some way. They got a bit of his DNA and now he has it. Or he had a quirk that is similar to it and they've used enough trigger to make it work. Or they're using trigger on him to make him as close to him as possible because, hey, wouldn't it be kooky, crazy, spooky if this famous hero that mysteriously vanished came back and everyone's cheering and going, oh wow, O'Clock's back and he's better than ever, then all of a sudden he turns around and does the whole thing from Megamind where he just becomes the new bad guy. I think I'm not going to quote the scene because I don't remember it, but it's the bit where the Jonah Hill character decides to, you know, become the bad guy and now he's the one that's in charge of the place. You know, basically that kind of thing, and it crushes everyone's hearts because this beloved hero is now a bad guy. Like, that'd be an interesting twist to it. Whether or not they'll do that, we'll soon see. But in the meantime, what we will say is that now it's time for Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner, recorded several days after the fact. Once again, yes, it's Friday when I'm doing this, only a few hours away from the Dragon Ball Daima review, but hey-ho, we continue on, and Big X1 is back again like a renegade master saying, I don't mind All Might being in this, I like the way that it shows us what he was like in close to his prime years. Thank you for your comment, that's of course referring to the previous episode, and I will admit I've read the next one as well, so talking about heroes being in their prime and such, have to watch what I'm saying. But I will say for the hero now, at the very least, that I'm just very I'm just unsure about it at the moment. There's a part of me that worries that it's going to be like what we saw in prior volumes, where we'll just see these main story characters overriding what our cast is doing in this one. Feels like they're taking the spotlight from them. It's stopping our main cast members from doing cool and interesting things. Like, as fun as it is to see Crawler getting knocked about a bit, yeah, I would like to see our hero being the hero, or at least being more of a main focus, but that's a debate and discussion for a whole other time. Let me know what you thought about this particular episode in the comments down below. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!